Israeli military forces raid Gaza's largest hospital in operation against Hamas. Biden says his goal for Xi meeting is to get U.S.-China communications back to normal. Israel says it has launched an operation inside Gaza hospital. Today is Friday, November 10th, 2023, and this is the Dunkley Report. The Israeli military says its forces are raiding Gaza's largest hospital, the site of a lengthy standoff with the Hamas militant group. The army surrounded Shifa Hospital as part of its ground offensive. Israeli authorities claim Hamas conceals military operations in the hospital, a claim denied by Hamas and medical staff. But with hundreds of patients and medical personnel inside, the Israeli military has refrained from entering. Early Wednesday, the army said its forces were carrying out a precise and targeted operation there against Hamas. It gave no further details, but said it was taking steps to avoid harm to civilians. The Israeli army says its forces are carrying out a precise and targeted operation against Hamas militants in a specific area of Shifa Hospital, the largest in the besieged territory of Gaza. Israel has accused Hamas of using hospitals as cover for its fighters, and it has alleged that Hamas has set up its main command center in and beneath Shifa, using civilians there as human shields. Hamas and Shifa hospital staff have denied the claims. Israel says it is taking steps to avoid harm to civilians in the operation. The United Nations Humanitarian Office says fighting between Israeli troops and Palestinian militants in northern Gaza has caused another 200,000 people to flee south in the past 10 days. President Joe Biden and China's Xi Jinping have swept into San Francisco and are making their final preparations for their first engagement in a year. Biden expressed hope that the talks would help put shaky U.S.-China relationship in a better place. The two leaders arrived in the city to be greeted by hundreds of demonstrators who lined up along their motorcade routes, waving Chinese, Taiwanese, and Tibetan flags, as well as signs in support and opposition of the Chinese leader. Biden said his broad goal was to get Washington and Beijing on a normal course, corresponding once again, even as they have sharp differences on no shortage of issues. A lawyer for a man convicted in the 2006 killing of Russian investigative journalist Anna Politkovskaya received a presidential pardon after a stint fighting in Ukraine. Sergei Kurbanov was sentenced to 20 years in prison in 2014 for his role in the death of Politkovskaya, who wrote stories critical of Kremlin policies during the early years of President Vladimir Putin's term, the war in Chechnya, and human rights abuses. Her death triggered outrage at home and in the West, emphasizing the dangers faced by independent journalists in Russia. Since Russia invaded Ukraine, private military contractors and the Defense Ministry have offered pardons to prisoners in exchange for fighting in the war. North Korea says it has successfully tested new solid-fuel engines designed for intermediate-range ballistic missiles. The report Wednesday comes as North Korea works on developing nuclear-capable weapons targeting its rivals in the region. State media said military scientists tested the first stage and second stage missile engines on Saturday and Tuesday. Solid fuel missiles are easier to move and conceal, and can be made ready to launch faster than those using liquid fuel. The report did not say when the new missile system was expected to be completed. An analyst says the announcement may mean North Korea will test fire a missile using the new engines in the coming weeks. European Union nations have acknowledged they may fail to fulfill a promise for ammunition. Ukraine needs to stave off Russia's invasion and win back occupied territory. With much fanfare early this year, EU leaders promised to provide 1 million rounds of ammunition to Ukraine's front line by spring 2024. That would amount to a serious increase in production, but the bloc is finding it tough to come up with the goods. Some 300,000 rounds have been delivered from existing stocks in the EU so far, but the rest is harder to source before spring. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell said one solution would be redirecting current EU exports and prioritizing Ukraine. When Hurricane Otis roared into Acapulco Bay on Octa 25 with 165-mile-per-hour winds, sailor Ruben Torres recorded a 10-second audio message from a yacht called the Sereno. He says he doesn't want to exaggerate, but he asks his family members to pray. The Sereno was one of 614 boats that Mexico's Navy says were in the bay that night and ended up damaged or on the ocean floor. Of those aboard the Sereno, one person survived, while Torres and the boat's captain remain missing. Otis killed at least 48 people officially, most drowned, and some 26 are missing. Sailors, fishermen, and their families believe there are many more. Colombia has begun the sterilization of hippopotamuses, descendants of animals illegally brought to the country by late drug kingpin Pablo Escobar in the 1980s. 2 male hippos and 1 female underwent surgical sterilization as part of a larger government's effort to control the population of more than 100 of the mammals that roam around unsupervised in some rivers. The plan includes the sterilization of 40 hippos a year, transfer some of them to other countries, and possibly euthanasia. The company, run by Mexican TV, retail and banking magnate Ricardo Salinas Pliego, says it has failed to reach agreement with bondholders in the United States, who are owed tens of millions of dollars in past due payments. His TV Azteca company issued a statement Tuesday saying it needed a restructuring of bonds that come due in 2024 because business was so bad. It also, a resolution couldn't be reached in court-ordered mediation. It is an unusual situation for Salinas Pliego, who frequently takes social media to hand out money or merchandise. He also often posts insults targeting political figures he disagrees with, as well as photos showing his lavish lifestyle with yachts and expensive vehicles. Comedian John Oliver has succeeded in his campaign to have what he describes as a weird, puking bird with a colorful mullet win New Zealand's Bird of the Century contest. He managed to elbow out the iconic national bird, the kiwi, which came in second. Conservation group Forest and Bird announced early Wednesday that Oliver's favored water bird, the Putekateki, had won after the host of HBO's Last Week Tonight campaigned heavily and humorously on his show. Forest and Bird holds a contest every year to raise awareness about the plight of New Zealand's native birds. Oliver discovered a loophole in the rules which allowed anybody with a valid email address to cast a vote. Vote checkers in New Zealand were so inundated that they had to delay the result. Today's news was reported by the Associated Press. This has been the international news for Wednesday, November 15th, 2023. Thanks again for joining us here at the Dunkley Report.